Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The Liberals and NDP have formed a partnership to keep the Trudeau Liberals in power until the year 2025. Political reporter Brian Lilly explains what that will mean for many Canadians. The CP rail strike has come to an end with 3,000 union members voting to ratify a new agreement. And the strike by the U of L Faculty Association is also over as teachers and students head back to school. We have the details.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Well, it's official. The Justin Trudeau Liberals and the NDP are in agreement to support the Liberal minority government through the year 2025. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says this partnership with the Liberals will address his party's priorities of achieving national dental and pharmacare programs. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says this decision was all about stability in uncertain times and doing what they felt was best for Canadians.
This agreement is not about compromising the core beliefs of either of our parties or denying the differences between us. What it is about is making sure that those differences don't stand in the way of delivering for Canadians. We both believe firmly in Parliament's role of keeping the government accountable. This agreement maintains that critical function. We'll continue to engage in healthy debate with each other and disagree on things, just like we'll also continue working with other parties in the House of Commons to reach consensus and make progress together.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh agrees with the Prime Minister, saying this new agreement between their parties will get the help to Canadians who need it right now.
Everyone I talk to, people are telling me that they need help now, and they expect politicians to deliver that help. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're using our power to get help to people.
Interim Conservative leader Candice Bergen says this is not a good day for Canadians. Bergen says this deal will lead to more debt, higher inflation, more jobs lost, and even more polarization.
This is an NDP Liberal government, and they have the majority. 82% of voters did not vote for a Liberal NDP government, including millions of Liberal voters. These Canadians woke up this morning to the fact that they have been hoodwinked and they've been deceived by their Prime Minister. Now, let me be clear, this is nothing more than a Justin Trudeau power grab. He is desperately clinging to power. His number one goal, as we have seen over the course of the last 6 years, is always to do what's best for him, not to do what's best for Canadians. Now, make no mistake, the NDP are in charge. What does this mean? Well, it means the decimation of Canadian oil and gas and LNG, which we know this more than ever. That means that is really a way to prop up Putin and Russia.
Even though the Liberals and NDP say what they formed is not a coalition, our political reporter Brian Lilly says if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck.
They're all playing semantic word games here. It is a coalition. It's not a coalition government per se, because they didn't give cabinet seats to the NDP, but they have a coalition. They have a formal agreement, a working agreement to prop each other up until 2025.
Mr. Brian Lilly will have more details as to what the new partnership between the Liberals and NDP means for Canadians. That's coming up in the second half of our program. Police in Ottawa say a man has been arrested and charged with arson at an apartment building in Centertown last month. Police say there's no apparent link between the suspect and the Freedom Convoy protest, which took place at the same time. The incident occurred on February 6th in the heart of the protest zone. Residents of the building say they found fire starter bricks in the lobby, and the front doors were forced closed and sealed with tape. A passerby saw the flames open the door and put out the fire before anyone was hurt. 21-year-old Ottawa resident Connor Russell McDonald faces numerous charges, including arson and disregard for human life. He's due in court on April the 21st. CP Railway and its union representing 3,000 conductors, train and yard workers say they agreed to final and binding arbitration to end the work stoppage. Workers returned to the job at noon on Tuesday. Union spokesperson Dave Fulton says while arbitration was not the preferred method, Teamsters were able to negotiate terms and conditions in the best interest of members, with wages and pensions being the biggest stumbling blocks. CP President Keith Creel said in a statement that the railway is happy to have reached an agreement enabling the company to resume essential services for customers and the North American supply chain. After weeks on the picket line here, the University of Lethbridge Faculty Association and the university's Board of Governors have reached an agreement. As BCN's Nathan Ryder reports now, faculty members say the strike was precedent-setting.
The spring semester at the University of Lethbridge is now set to continue after a near 6-week stoppage. Members of the University of Lethbridge Faculty Association and the Board of Governors ratified the agreement Monday night. 92% of ULFA members voted, with 91% voting in favor of ratification. President of the Faculty Association, Dan O'Donnell, says the length of the strike is unprecedented.
People across the country that what happened here was a classic example of old-fashioned union busting. I was told by David Robinson at CAUT that he cannot remember in this century an example of a university that simply refused to talk for 3 weeks. That it's going to be an extremely heavy task to try and repair the damage. And the damage is not 6 weeks old. The damage is many years old.
I think that it was very frustrating as a student to be part of this strike in a way, because we have no, formal power at the bargaining table to influence the decision to be made either way, as it should be. But to be held in sort of limbo for almost 6 weeks was definitely very difficult.
In a statement to Bridge City News, the University of Lethbridge says, "We understand relationships with faculty members were strained during the strike and are committed to mending them over time. Our new collective agreement with ULFA is an important first step. It offers fair and reasonable raises and benefits to our colleagues, while ensuring access to high-quality education and protecting the university's long-term sustainability." For Bridge City News, I'm Nathan Ryder.
Well, it was another beautiful day in the Windy Cities. We saw double-digit temperatures once again. Jeanette Roche is in with a quick peek at the weather forecast. Jeanette, it should be another beautiful day on Wednesday before the arrival of some spring showers.
Yeah, Hal, we could see temperatures in Lethbridge rise up to 18 degrees on Wednesday as we are enjoying those lovely spring-like temperatures and weather. And it is officially spring now. I know I was outside earlier today without a jacket. It was just lovely. But of course, with spring comes springtime showers. We could be expecting some of those as early as Thursday. Also some windy conditions into this evening and tomorrow. I will have the rest of the details about this week coming up later on in the show.
Thanks so much, Jeanette. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres believes there's enough diplomatic progress for Russia to cease hostilities against Ukraine now and negotiate peace. He says the war is unwinnable, and the only question is how many more lives will be lost and how many more cities will be destroyed before the war moves from the battlefield to the peace table. Guterres says the war is becoming more predictable by the hour. He says the Ukrainian people are enduring a living hell.
The only question is how many more lives must be lost? How many more bombs must fall? How many Mariupols must be destroyed? How many more Ukrainians and Russians will be killed before everyone realizes that this war has no winners, only losers? How many more people will have to die in Ukraine? And how many people around the world will have to face hunger for this to stop? Continuing the war in Ukraine is morally unacceptable, politically indefensible, and militarily nonsensical.
The UN estimates more than 10 million refugees have now fled the war in Ukraine. A shopping center in downtown Kyiv was left in ruins after being hit late on Sunday by shelling that killed 8 people. Emergency officials say they simply don't understand why civilians are being targeted.
Що вони хочуть добитися тим, що нещадно бомбардують торгівельні центри, лікарні, роддоми, будинки мирних? Що вони цим хочуть добитися? Чи розумію того я не розумію. Чи розумієте те ви? Думаю, що також ні.
Now, as the war between Ukraine and Russia rages on, a number of Ukrainian orphans who were due to fly to the United Kingdom are now stuck in Poland because of missing paperwork.
As we were on the way to the airport, we were told there's a document missing and that we only had half an hour for the authorities to sort it out. And we just waited and waited and hoped. And then in the end, we were told that the plane had to be cancelled because they wouldn't be able to leave Britain until The Polish authorities confirmed that they could land, and they couldn't land without this piece of paper from the Ukrainian authorities confirming it was okay to fly the children out.
Samaritan's Purse is partnering with Open Door Foundation to provide shelter for refugees who are fleeing the fighting in Ukraine.
My heart for Ukraine is to help the orphans, to help the children, because that's what God's heart is. As soon as the war broke out in my beautiful country, it broke my heart. I knew I had to do something about it. So I've been working with Samaritan Purse, established emergency field hospital. The support and the partnership that I have with Samaritan Purse gives me ability to continue what we have started. We have this place for the refugees. Over 1,000 people's been to this place. Now we're standing here and waiting for another bus full of orphans that have been pulled out of southeast of Ukraine that need a place to stay.
It's like wondering, who are you people? This morning, like, all the stuff was in tears, like, because, you know, you have kids and you just literally don't know where to go. And then, you know, we got a miracle.
We're a Christian organization that love God and we want to love people. So we've been doing this from the first day of war. Samaritan's Purse is a partner that's helping us to do this. We take care of them spiritually, we take care of them physically, we give them food, we give them housing. This is who we are.
I mean, looking what God did, it's like, it's just amazing. Look at this kid, you know, they're playing over there. And this morning I got a message from my friend. He said, like, you know, whole world is praying for you. And that's what God did.
It's a God story. So thank you so much for sharing. Some of these kids been through the second war in 2014, so they had to flee. And now it's happening again. This is like a new normal in a way, which is horrible. So that trauma hasn't been healed. And the only way to heal something like that is our Heavenly Father. There is no human that could help with this.
The Salvation Army also provides critical humanitarian aid where it's needed the most. Now, you can make donations to the Army, which will then be sent to help those who've been displaced in Ukraine. Donald Bladen, the Community Ministries Officer for the Lethbridge Salvation Army, says the group has been out on the front lines to help those who need it the most.
And so I know the Salvation Army, for instance, has provided diapers and formula and counsel and clothing and all kinds of compassionate care relative to a number of babies that were born in a subway, for instance, in Kyiv. What can you say about those things? Desperate situations require very desperate measures. But the Salvation Army is mobilized in Ukraine and in that entire region and has been for many, many, many years.
Now, if you'd like to donate to the Army's work in Ukraine, you can do so by calling 1-800-SAL-ARMY or visit their website. Lethbridge City Council unanimously approved the Lethbridge Fire Department to donate expired or surplus items to support the war in Ukraine. Life cycle medical kits, expired disposable wound care items, and personal protective equipment will be shipped off to help Ukrainian first responders. The Lethbridge Chief of Fire and Emergency Services, Greg Adair, says the items will be sent to Calgary first.
We will then be joining the group out of Calgary who's shipping it to Toronto at their cost and through their donations from Toronto. It's picked up through the Ukraine group in Toronto and sent on, I believe it's Merrick Transportation, which will take 2 days to actually reach the front lines in Ukraine. We're not part of any of that, but we weren't asked for any money or funding to actually transport that. That would all be taken care of through this individual who's organizing it.
Now, Adair says there's no cost for the listed items as they have no operational or marketplace value. Alberta finance critic and Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips attacked the UCP for not doing enough to protect Albertans from inflation. Phillips says the UCP's bracket tax creep will make things even tougher for many Alberta families.
If we are elected, we will fix this problem and we will allow all of our programs to fight inflation. We will inflation-proof your budget by giving you back more of your income tax, more of the benefits that you deserve at the same rate as inflation. If inflation goes up by 5%, so does the income tax system. We won't let Jason Kenney's approach last, which is that if inflation goes up by 5%, you pay more.
Phillips adds under the NDP plan that there would be more help available for seniors, families, and the most vulnerable. Premier Jason Kenney has already said that his province is giving Albertans a fuel tax break April 1st, along with utility rebates to help in the fight against inflation. The Alberta government announced a unique new partnership with the Lethbridge Police Service and the Blood Tribe Police. Those who are battling addiction now have access to addiction treatment once they're arrested. Alberta's virtual dependency program says that anyone who is taken into custody in Lethbridge or in the Blood Tribe will be able to access an addiction medicine physician. Lethbridge Police Chief Shahimi Dizadeh says this is a voluntary program and officers can also implement it on the streets.
The next piece is also critical because not only we can do it in our cell block, we can actually do it from our officers on the street and also our watch program, who can actually promote and encourage people to take advantage of this program. People don't need to be arrested for us to help them, to get them to that treatment they deserve. We can do it both when they're in our custody and also people we deal with on the street to get them to the right treatment programs they deserve.
The province says around 70% of opioid-related deaths in Alberta occur in private residences, often among those using opioids or other substances while alone. Lethbridge City Council has again proclaimed April 7th as Green Shirt Day here in our city. Now, the day honors the victims of the Humboldt Broncos bus crash and player Logan Boulet, who saved 6 lives when he donated his organs following the tragic crash in April of 2018. Lethbridge Mayor Blaine Higgins says the day encourages people to continue to donate their organs.
And I've heard it each time we've actually had this resolution come forward. It just reminds people. I mean, it had a lot that the first year, and it starts to come back. And as soon as each time that the day comes forward, there's more and more individuals that sign up for organ donation. So it does. It's important, I think, going back to again having it each year and bringing this forward, and how that does help those in need for sure.
It is estimated that since the Boulet organ donation began, around 150,000 people registered to become organ donors in the days and weeks that followed. A new app is allowing the City of Lethbridge to save a lot of money. The Lethbridge Loop app will also allow you to check out daily city service reminders at the palm of your hand. Micah Quinn has the details.
We're going to be saving more than $10,000 annually when we move to an app, purely based on the fact that tech subscription rates are going up with the current company that we use.
Megan Williams, the communications strategist for the City of Lethbridge, says on top of those savings, the free app is designed to show scheduled waste and recycling reminders or anything else that is a planned city service.
The spring street sweeping schedule that will be released shortly. So if, for instance, if you're somebody that doesn't have off-the-street parking in front of your house, you can receive a reminder about street sweepers coming through your block. Planned power outages as well. We will still be using the other forms of communication that we currently have, so things like PSAs, social media, and then direct letter drops to homes that are affected as well. But this is just another way for us to give people a heads up that we're going to be in their area and their city services may be impacted for the day.
Text reminders for waste and recycling services will stop on April 1st. Lethbridge Mayor Blaine Higgin says the app is easy to use.
If you were hooked up to the text link before, you'll just click on that. It'll take you in to download it, and it's a very simple app to navigate. It's non-intrusive at all. It's very, very easy to navigate around.
If you download the app before April 8th, you will be entered to win one of 2 prize packs. For more information, you can visit the City of Lethbridge Facebook page. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Thanks to some help from Lethbridge College students through the Tech Connect Challenge, a local mustard producer has tips on how to help grow his business. 6 teams of students were asked to create new solutions to help an entrepreneur expand. Tanya Weeder with the college says this year's entrepreneur faced a number of challenges.
Robert Luco and Luco Farms was our entrepreneur this year. Their biggest challenge right now was they wanted to grow their business kind of beyond where it is now and target some specific areas that they haven't targeted before. The folks from Luco Farms were really excited by the pitches from the students. It was very much a fresh perspective. They're a legacy brand, so they've been in Southern Alberta for a long time. So the students really brought to them a variety of different ways to engage with their customers.
So nice to see students working together with our local entrepreneurs. And by the way, Weeder says the Tech Connect Challenge is now in its 7th year. Well, it was another beautiful spring-like day in the city, but more of a mixed bag is on the way weather-wise. A full look at the long-range weather forecast is coming up. It was a gorgeous day for a walk down at Henderson Lake today in Lethbridge, or even having a barbecue. Jeanette Rocher is in now with a full look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, now's the time for having a barbecue since a little moisture may be on the way.
Yeah, well, I don't see why not, Hal, particularly on Wednesday when we are going to see temperatures rise to 18 degrees. A bit gusty winds, though, so keep that in mind as well. We could see 50K gusts this evening, up to 60 kilometers per hour tomorrow. But you know, that high temperature is telling us a sure sign that spring is here. Another telltale sign of spring, of course, is spring showers. We could be expecting those on Thursday with a high of only 4 degrees, though. Temperature rising to 9 degrees on Friday with a mix of sun and cloud, up to 10 degrees on Saturday. Sunday, mainly cloudy skies, 8 degrees the high. And Sunday evening, we're looking at a slight chance of flurries and or showers lasting into Monday. 40% chance of showers and flurries, 4 degrees the high there. So with that chance of flurries, that might be a sign that winter wants to hang on a little bit longer. 7 degrees is our average high for this time of year. -6 the average low. 22 was our high temperature back in 1939, and in 1966 we have that's our lowest temperature on record. It was -22 on that day. 7:30 is when the sun rose this morning, and our sun set this evening. 7:46 p.m. Giving us 12 hours and 16 minutes of daylight. I will take that. We're looking at showers tomorrow on the west coast. Victoria seeing a 60% chance of rain. 12 degrees the high, 10 degrees the high in Vancouver with the rain, but clearing up throughout the day. 16 degrees the high tomorrow in Edmonton with a mix of sun and cloud, and 15 degrees the high in Calgary tomorrow with partly cloudy skies. As we look to the rest of the prairie's beautiful sunshine in Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, 12 degrees the high, 8 degrees the high in Regina, 2 degrees the high in Winnipeg with increasing clouds throughout the day. Could see a bit of some wind gusts as well there in Winnipeg. Into central Canada, 60% chance of showers is the high is 1 degree in Toronto with a 60% chance of showers. Mix of sun and cloud in Ottawa tomorrow, 3 degrees the high, 5 degrees the high in Montreal with partly cloudy skies as well. As we look to the east coast, seeing a high of 3 degrees in Fredericton, 2 degrees in Halifax, a 60% chance of flurries in both Charlottetown and St. John's tomorrow with highs of 1 degree. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz dismissed calls to boycott Russian energy supplies in the wake of the attack on Ukraine. Scholz says the sanctions already imposed on Russia were hitting its economy and that the effect will only get more dramatic each and every day. At the same time, he says the sanctions were designed to be tolerable for those imposing them, including in the long term. Ukrainian officials say the millions of dollars paid by European countries each day for Russian fossil fuels is effectively financing the war with their country. Canadian Pacific Railway workers were back on the job Tuesday afternoon. The Calgary-based company and the union representing 3,000 conductors, engineers, and train and yard workers agreed to binding arbitration. Teamsters Canada Rail Conference officials say it was not what the union preferred, but it was able to negotiate wage and pension terms that were in the best interest of its members. CP Rail says the railway was able to resume essential services for customers and the North American supply chain. Ford is recalling close to 215,000 pickup trucks and large SUVs across North America because brake fluid can leak and cause longer stopping distances. The recall covers the F-150 trucks from 2016 to 2018. Also the 2016 and 2017 Ford Expeditions and Lincoln Navigators. All have the 3.5-liter turbocharged 6-cylinder motors. U.S. safety regulators say that fluid can leak from the brake's master cylinder, which can increase brake pedal travel, requiring more effort and longer stopping distances. A number of farmers and ranchers here in southern Alberta are quite concerned that we may have another drought this year. Jason Hale, the vice chair of Alberta Beef Producers, says another drought this summer would have a major impact and be devastating for producers.
Well, the big issue everybody's talking about right now is the drought we came through. You know, what's going to happen this summer? You know, we drastically need moisture to help the grass grow, for water supplies for our cattle. So, you know, that's on the forefront of our mind now, and we've been working with the government last summer, last fall, you know, to come up with solutions to help our cattle ranchers continue in the business.
Catch the full interview with Jason Hale from Alberta Beef Producers. Hear a lot of his concerns with BCN's Naveen Day coming up after business news. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 65 points on the day to 22,074. The Dow was up 254 points to 34,807. The S&P 500 was up 50 points to 4511, and the Nasdaq was up 270 on the day to 14,108. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 36 cents to 111.76 per barrel. Natural gas was up 29 cents to 5.19 US. Gold was down 2 cents to 19.2166 US an ounce, and silver was up 6 cents to 24.83 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $13.34 per bushel, barley's at $9.80, canola's at $25.95, and corn is at $11.94 per bushel. Live cattle were down 63 cents to $139.43. Feeder cattle were up 23 cents to $156.33, and lean hogs were down 38 cents to $100.25. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 79.53 US. Recapping one of our top stories, the Liberals and the NDP are in agreement to support the Liberal minority government through the year 2025. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says this partnership with the Liberals will address his party's priorities of achieving national dental and pharmacare programs. Interim Conservative leader Candice Bergen says this is not a good day for Canadians. Bergen says this deal will lead to more debt, higher inflation, more jobs lost, and even more polarization. Coming up, political reporter Brian Lilley will discuss what this Liberal NDP coalition not only means for Canadians, but also the Conservative Party as it picks its new leader coming up in September. But first, here's a look at some of the special events taking place in and across southwestern Alberta.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. The Helen Schuler Nature Center is providing an introductory workshop to fly fishing on Saturday, March 26th from 12:30 to 4 p.m. Learn about Alberta's native fish species, get tips and tricks for choosing equipment, try your hand at tying flies, and practice casting techniques. The workshop is $25 per person and is open to those 16 years and older. To register, call the Nature Center at 403-320-3064. The 11th annual Coaldale Family Fun Run is going virtual and in person. Run or walk, this race is a great motivator to get out and get active. The virtual race begins April 2nd and the in-person event takes place Saturday, April 9th, beginning at 10 a.m. at Coaldale Christian School. $2 from every entry will go to support Rehoboth, a Christian ministry which serves people with disabilities. To register and for more information, visit racepro.ca/Coaldale. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
The federal Liberals and the NDP have formed a coalition to keep the Liberals in power until at least the year 2025. To discuss this in more detail is our political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley. Now, Brian, I thought the NDP was supposed to be an opposition party. What does this deal really mean?
Well, Jagmeet Singh would tell you that he is still a member of the opposition party and that he will oppose the government. And the government, by the way, and the NDP would both quibble with that word you used, Hal. How dare you call it a coalition? It's not a coalition because the NDP doesn't have seats at the cabinet table. So, you know, they're all playing semantic word games here. It is a coalition. It's not a coalition government per se because they didn't give cabinet seats to the NDP, but they have a coalition. They have a formal agreement, a working agreement to prop each other up until 2025. So the NDP is, you know, saying that they will still oppose certain things, like if the Liberals, you know, put forward a big boost in defense spending, the NDP would oppose that, they say, but they also say that they will want to see a lot of increased spending in other areas. So that will all be in a budget. They're not going to vote down the government over defense spending when they can get all this other goodies. So, you know, it is semantic wordplay here. And yeah, barring unforeseen circumstances, we've just seen Justin Trudeau turned into a majority prime minister for the next 4 years.
Shouldn't we look at potential term limits like they have in the United States?
That would be difficult to do given our system because in the United States, their constitution actually recognizes the president, which is the only job at the federal level that comes with those term limits. We don't have a constitutional recognition of prime minister. The prime minister is whoever controls the confidence of the House of Commons. And so, people can swap parties and coalitions and do all these different things. So I don't see term limits being something that would work, although Canadians generally don't like to see someone stick around too long. By the end of this agreement, Trudeau will have been prime minister for 10 years, and he says he will continue on and plans to fight through the next election. I'm not sure Canadians will be willing to do that because we haven't given anybody that long of a run in quite some time.
Brian, a key part of the deal is for both pharma and dental care to be rolled out by the federal government, but are these not provincial responsibilities?
Solely and clearly provincial responsibilities. And so it's already being blasted in Quebec. I'm sure we will hear from other premiers as well that will say, you know what, this is not what I signed on for. On the pharmacare program, each province does have their own system for people who don't have prescription benefits paid for by their employer. Quebec has the most advanced, but Alberta has one as well. I was just perusing that. You can buy into Alberta Blue Cross if you're a senior or you're someone who's working but low income. You can buy in to ensure that you've got prescription drug coverage. The goal of this one is universal pharmacare with one single national buyer for all prescription drugs. The idea is, well, that will drive down cost. It will also, Hal, be extremely bureaucratic. And what about the fights between the provinces? Ontario has a significant generic drug manufacturing footprint. Quebec has a very significant name brand pharmaceutical footprint. Which one's going to get preference? Because I can tell you what the provinces prefer in their own respective plans. So this is going to be a disaster. They say it's about stopping hyper-partisanship and making Parliament work nice and friendly. Yeah, but it's also starting war with the provinces.
Now, Brian, the Prime Minister says this deal, this partnership between the Liberals and the NDP will ensure fiscal responsibility, but you say it may lead to higher spending and higher taxes. Why is that?
Well, it's right in the document that they want higher taxes. The Liberals ran on it in the last election. They said, let's tax those rich banks. They made so much money during the pandemic, so we're going to tax them more. They want to increase the corporate tax rate for banks and insurance companies from 15% to 18%. Then they also have this thing they want them to pay called the Canada Recovery Dividend. So because you did well for the next 4 years, we're going to tax you above and beyond the 18% that we're raising just on your industry. The NDP wants that extended to the oil and gas industry. They want it extended to big box stores. How they define that, I don't know. But so suddenly things at Costco or Walmart will cost more because if they increase taxes, what's a retailer going to do? They're going to push that cost onto you, the consumer. This is going to drive away investment in some of our best industries. Right up there with oil and gas is the financial industry in Canada. Both banks and insurance are major employers, major economic drivers, and we are now going to be punishing them and discouraging them at exactly the wrong time. We're going to make ourselves uncompetitive. And as far as the spending, well, when you're bringing in a national pharmacare plan, you're going to be hiring a lot of people because you're not going to be relying on those insurance companies that you've just said are too successful. You're going to be taxing those, making them lay people off because they're going to shut down the drug plan that you've got with Canada Life or Manulife or any of these firms. Now they're going to be shutting that down and hiring these people as bureaucrats at a higher rate of pay. It's going to lead to dramatically increased spending, which of course will mean higher taxes and higher deficits.
So, Brian, will this coalition or partnership between the Liberals and NDP guarantee that we won't have an election until at least 2025?
No, there's no guarantee in this. And just like the BC Greens and BC NDP, well, that was supposed to last a year longer than it did. But John Horgan saw political opportunity, so he went early. Voters did not end up punishing him for that. We could see the same sort of thing happen here. The Liberals could say, you know what, our fortunes are looking really good right now. Let's go to the polls. Or the NDP could say, this is not living up to our expectations. We're out of here. any of those things could happen. So while that is the theory that the government will survive till 2025, that's not necessarily how it will go in practice. My bet is if the Liberals see an opportunity to win a majority, they'll take it. If they don't, they'll do the best they can to get close to that 2025 date.
So what does this coalition mean for the Conservative Party of Canada and their leadership race? They're choosing a new leader in September.
And we'll have to wait and see what it means in terms of the leadership race. In the short term, this is great for the Conservatives when it comes to fundraising. The Conservative Party is going to be able to send out emails and letters and make phone calls and say, see, we told you this big, nasty left-wing coalition was coming in. The socialists are taking over. Because let's face it, this is pretty much a merger of the NDP and Liberal ethos. There's no more centrist Liberal Party anymore. The Conservatives are going to be able to bang the drum and say, send us money. We're the only ones that are standing up to this insane level of spending and these other promises that are going on. You know, how different leadership candidates will be able to take advantage of this remains to be seen, but I'm sure that they're all going to be trying to say, well, no, I'm the one that can stand up to the NDP Liberal Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, Frankenstein government that we've got over there. They'll all be making that claim, and voters will have to determine which candidate they actually think has the best shot at it.
Now, a new poll by Angus Reid shows that the two front-runners in the race so far for the Tories are Pierre Poilievre and Jean Charest. Each could move support for the Tories as high as 42%, but would do so in different ways. Can you explain?
Yeah, so I mean, this is good news if you want a solid Conservative alternative to the Trudeau Liberal government, because you need to be able to grow. I keep saying this, whoever they choose, they've got to choose someone who can take the party from the 33-34% that they've received in the last two elections and move them up to 37% or higher to form government. In this Angus Reid poll, it didn't look at all the candidates, and I think the poll was being taken as new people were still entering the race. We might see more people add their names, but it looked at Charest and Poilievre and said, okay, would you consider voting for the Conservatives if they were led by either of these two men? Now, 42%, that would be a solid majority government. And both can, according to Angus Reid, get to 42%, but they draw their support from different areas. Pierre Poilievre wins handily by 59, 57% support as the guy to do that when you're in Alberta or Saskatchewan, in Manitoba. They're tied at about 37% of the population in BC say they would look to them to do that. But Charest does better in Ontario, in Atlantic Canada, but they're tied in Quebec, which may shock a lot of people. But Charest has a history in Quebec, and some people really don't like him in that province. And so, I think it's 35% for Pierre Poilievre and 33% for Jean Charest. That's effectively a statistical tie. So they draw from different people. Charest also draws from an older crowd, Poilievre from a younger crowd. Both would draw support from Liberal voters, Charest more, but Pierre Poilievre would have 15% of people who voted Liberal in the last election say they would consider voting for the Conservatives led by Poilievre. He also has about 17% of New Democrats, higher than Charest, saying he'd vote for them. But Charest gets almost a third of Liberal voters saying, yeah, we'd consider the Conservatives if he were leader.
Now, Pierre Poilievre has gone on record saying that he would eliminate the carbon tax. Mind you, we've heard other Tory leaders say that in the past and then have a change of heart. But he also said he would strongly support the energy sector here in Canada, which bodes well for Alberta. What has Jean Charest said in regards to the carbon tax and oil and gas?
He said that he is a big supporter of oil and gas. I had an interview with him last week, and we talked about this quite a bit. He said that we've got to get past being a country that says no to everything. We've got to build big projects, and that includes oil and gas. But when it came to reducing carbon emissions, he was all in on something that Premier Scott Moe in Saskatchewan's big on, and that's small modular reactors, which are especially important in far remote communities where part of the year they might be running generators constantly on diesel, which whether you're a supporter of oil and gas or not, running your village on diesel is a pretty polluting way to do it. So these small modular reactors have been a big priority of Scott Moe, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, and New Brunswick's Blaine Higgs. They formed a coalition to put money into it. Jason Kenney is now looking to join them in that. So we talked a lot about that. On the carbon tax, he said he didn't shy away from his past support of a price on carbon, but said it's got to be done smart so that you're not punishing farmers, you're not punishing families. And he said that the current Trudeau plan is definitely not smart. So an interesting take from him, because the easy thing to do would have been to say, well, I have a different position now. He's not shying away from any of the positions that people would say, well, they're controversial. His offer to Conservative voters is take me as I am.
A couple of low-profile MPs, Scott Aitchison and Mark Dalton, have now joined the leadership race to win this CPC. Do these guys have any shot at winning, Brian?
I don't really think so, because a lot of people would be saying, Mark who? Scott, what? You know, Scott Aitchison, for example, is a very successful mayor in Huntsville, which is a small town in cottage country of Ontario. He's well known there, but he's not well known across the country. Mark Dalton, I don't think most Canadians would be able to pick him out of a lineup of Marks. If you said, here's 5 people named Mark, which one is Mark Dalton, the MP? They'd have trouble. These are not people with high name recognition, and that matters when you're running a leadership election. You know, Sheree and Poilievre are the front runners. Patrick Brown and Leslyn Lewis, I think, are strong contenders. But once you get beyond them, everybody else is running to raise their profile or push certain issues. I can definitely see a world where Patrick Brown or Leslyn Lewis do very well and exceed expectations. I can't see a world where Roman Baber, Mark Dalton, or Scott Aitchison do very well at all. And in fact, they may drop out by the time the $200,000 is due, because eventually you've got to pay that. And if you realize that you're not going to go forward, that may happen.
Brian, before we let you go, I wanted to chat with you a bit about inflation. Many Canadians are finding it very difficult right now, filling up their tanks, putting food on the table, paying their rent or their mortgage. Inflation went from 5.1 to 5.7%. Any word from the Trudeau Liberals about more help for Canadians?
No, not at this point. And I don't expect them to be supporting the Conservatives who are calling for a holiday on the GST on gas. You know, Alberta's doing that, lowering the gas price as long as oil is above $90 a barrel. Part of the reason they're able to do that is because their revenues are still going up on other fronts because of the high price of oil. Well, the government could do a GST holiday check or a rebate or some sort of stance. They did that in the past. We're going back 20 years ago, but they've done it in the past. Justin Trudeau is still showing that he doesn't really think about monetary policy. The Bank of Canada, which is independent, is putting up rates slightly. But the central government's still spending big, which is helping to drive inflation. This deal with the NDP is only going to see more government spending, which will hurt matters more. They're really not doing much. And when asked, he just keeps pointing to the National Childcare Plan, which is great if you've got kids in daycare, but it doesn't help seniors or you or me or anybody else with those expensive grocery bills.
That's right. Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.
Alberta is not just oil and gas. Agriculture makes up a large and historic part of our economy and way of life. The cattle industry in Alberta spans the province, and the products that come from cattle run the gamut from cosmetics, dyes, inks, and even plastics. There are more than 18,000 beef cattle producers across our province. And joining me today is the Vice Chair of the Alberta Beef Producers, Jason Hale. Jason, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. My pleasure to be here.
Now, Jason, we cannot drive anywhere through rural Alberta and not see two things, oil wells and cattle, and often in the same field. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of the ABP?
Yeah, ABP was started quite a while ago. It's went through a few different name changes, but we are elected by producers to represent them in issues with the government and supply chains and just the overall industry. We're elected by the producers to represent them.
Now, there's a long history of cattle ranching in Alberta. Can you give us a couple of examples of multi-generational ranching operations in Alberta?
Sure. My family, for example, my great-grandfather came from Ireland in 1910 and settled in the area. So we've been involved. My grandsons are the sixth generation, my grandchildren, I got a grandson and a granddaughter, of Hales that have been in the agriculture industry in this area in southern Alberta.
Wow, and now we've seen multinational businesses buy land and other kinds of agricultural operations in parts of Canada. Would you say that is happening in Alberta's cattle industry as well?
Yeah, it is. There are some lands being bought up. We have people that are businesses that involved in our sector as packing plants, that process our finished cattle. They're international companies that own those plants, and so it takes it takes all sorts to help our industry to compete in the world market and produce our beef here in Alberta.
Now, ranching is different from feedlots, correct? The reason why I ask is because I'm wondering if you can tell our viewers about the importance of grazing animals for the natural ecosystem.
Sure, we take plants and turn them into protein. Agricultural producers and the cattle ranchers, we are great stewards of the land. That's how we make our beef, how we make our livings. We have to have a great environment to raise our cattle and produce the class A beef that we do produce. So we work hand in hand with the environment, and we just have to have a healthy ecosystem to have a healthy cattle herd in Alberta.
Now, we have also heard from guests that we've had in the past that cattle are really good at turning low nutritional food into beef, which is a very important food source. Can you explain a little bit more about how cattle are nutritional recyclers?
Sure. Grasses and hays, we as people can't eat them. We don't do very good on them. You can eat them, I guess, but our cattle from when when they're born, they're feeding off the milk of their mothers, and they eat grass and hay and turn that into nutrition for their calves to help them grow. And as the calves get bigger, they start to eat the grass, that's so important to our ecosystem. And it's a great, it's just a great cycle that helps us to provide such an excellent source of protein.
Now, what about the dried brown grasses that we see the cattle grazing on as we drive by those fields? Are those grasses beneficial to the cattle?
Sure, you bet. A lot of our native grass, it has such nutrients in it because it's native to the area, and it doesn't take a lot of moisture to grow, and it's just packed full of nutrients that the cattle need.
And how important is beef cattle to the nutritional needs of Albertans?
Oh, it's a huge need. There are some that say it's not, but as cattle producers, we see a huge value. With nutritionists talking about the value of red meat. It's a daily mainstay in our diets.
Now, I understand that beef as a food source is one small part of what cattle should provide. What can you tell us about how important or versatile the byproducts of cattle are?
Well, sure. Milk. Cows produce milk, as with some other animals. But talking about beef, milk is it's another mainstay in our diet. And the byproducts from that milk, cheese. Any kind of those dairy products. The cattle, there's different sources of meat from that animal, and that's a big export of ours. The all the way from steaks, to the other protein products that come from a cow. We ship them around the world. It helps our industry financially. So yeah, every bit of the cow is, or the beef is used.
Now, it sounds like cattle are really important to modern society in many ways. Does this explain the high cost of beef in the grocery stores?
Well, it does. It's a supply and demand. We do see. I'm a cow calf producer, so I produce calves, and when they're at a certain age, then they're weaned off a cow, and I sell them to those feedlots. So it's different. Different parts of the cycle of the ag cow industry. It's different, makes different dollars. So the price you see in the store for beef doesn't necessarily make its way down to the cow calf producer. There's different chains along the way that make more money. So we it's kind of a myth you hear from consumers, like, oh, the price of beef is so high, you must be making, you guys are making great money. Well, that's not the case. When it gets down to us as cow calf producers, we have a lot of input costs, that go into raising that beef.
And I'm sure like the cost of fuel has also played a major role in the cost of beef, eh?
Oh, it has. Yeah, it sure has. And with the drought, we saw this past summer, Western Canada into the United States, it really increased the cost of feed. So that affects our bottom line when you have to pay that much more money for feed, fuel costs. We see natural gas costs. Everything is going up. Even beef in the store is going up, but that doesn't seem to trickle its way down to the profits that we make. It does cost a lot of money to raise that beef.
Now, can you tell us like some of the benefits of ranching, like how ranching benefits the local economy?
Oh, the spin-offs from ranching are, it's billions of dollars that we put into the provincial economics. All of the farms, we have equipment, so we're buying parts for that equipment. We're buying tires, the fuel, and it's a huge industry that provides a lot to the GDP of our province.
Wow. So, what are some of the issues facing cattle operations in Alberta?
Well, the big issue everybody's talking about right now is the drought we came through. What's going to happen this summer? We drastically need moisture to help the grass grow, for water supplies for our cattle. So that's on the forefront of our mind now, and we've been working with the government last summer, last fall, to come up with solutions to help our cattle ranchers continue in the business.
Now, you recently had an annual general meeting. Can you just tell us like some of the topics discussed during your recent AGM?
Yeah, we have our AGM, and it's made up of delegates that are elected by producer from our 5 zones in the province. So those delegates, we get together, we do talk policy, and we elect a new board. There was, I think, half the board, their term has expired, so we elected some new board members, some returning board members, and then from our board meeting after our AGM, then we elect an executive, which is Melanie Wolk. She's our chair. I'm the vice chair, and Brody Hogan is our finance chair. So yeah, we it was great to have an AGM where we could actually meet in person and talk about issues and how best we can provide support to our producers we represent.
So what are some of the ways in which the Alberta beef producers prepare local producers for the future of cattle ranching?
We work with the government. We're closely tied to the ag minister because he kind of looks after our industry. We fund research projects and other groups that do work for the cattle industry. And, we're just a conduit for information, through the federal, the Beef Research Council, BCRC. They do great research projects. We try to have different avenues to pass that information along to our producers. We've got a great magazine, Alberta Beef Producer Magazine. that, is a communication tool. We have an app, and we have our website. So we try to get the information out, and if producers want to get back to us, we find information out for them. It's a lot of communication.
That definitely sounds like there's a lot of communication there. So how can someone get their hands on the Alberta Beef magazine?
You just go on our website, Alberta Beef Producers. You can sign up there. Put your name in, your address, and a little bit about your business, and we'll get you the magazine.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jason. Jason Hale is the Vice Chair for the Alberta Beef Producers and joined us today from his property near Bazano, Alberta. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day. God bless, and thanks for watching.